Welcome to the Polish Podcast, where we embolden women to live out their faith in every aspect of their life, including the workplace. I'm your host, Jane Doerman, and I am thrilled to have you with us. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button to join our community of ambitious women who are committed to growing in their leadership and faith. At Polish Network, we believe your work is more than just a job. It's a calling. We're here to provide the connections you crave, development you deserve, and the gospel that you need to thrive. Each episode features inspiring conversations with women who are leading with faith in the workplace. Our goal is to ignite your passion and equip you to lead with wisdom and courage. So let's jump in to today's episode. Bold leadership is often misunderstood as loud or aggressive. But today, we're exploring a different perspective. True boldness comes from a place of humility. Real boldness doesn't seek attention. It steps up when needed, and it steps back when it's time to serve. It's a courage rooted in recognizing that our leadership is about more than just us. And to help us dive into this idea, we have Denise Lee Yohn, co-founder and co-executive director of the Bay Area Center for Faith, Work, and Tech. With experience at companies like Google and Apple, Denise is passionate about equipping leaders to navigate the challenges of today's tech-driven world with both faith and humility, a passion deeply rooted in her own personal journey.
I became a Christian around the same time that I started my professional career. And so these two things were very important to me. I was very passionate about pursuing both, vigorously, but not really understanding or knowing how they had anything to do with each other. And kind of felt some conflict over that. And then did a lot of research, a lot of praying, listening to sermons, listening to speakers, and discovered what I call the gospel of work, which is, my work matters to God and God matters to my work. And then about 20 years ago, I had the opportunity to start sharing what I had learned. I was living in San Diego at the time and had been working with a pastor there who invited me to start up this marketplace ministry. And so that was really like the culmination of my faith and work integration. And that continues on today now as I am the co-founder and co-executive director of the Bay Area Center for Faith, Work, and Tech. But I still kind of have these two hats. I'm still wearing these two hats, one in the corporate business world. Currently, I'm a speaker, as you said, on brand leadership. So what that means is I get to go around the country, really around the world, talk to companies and go to conferences and speak to business leaders about how to engage their employees and their customers in meaningful experiences. And then I also work in the nonprofit ministry side of things, where I'm running this ministry, promoting and cultivating faith and work integration for others. So
Denise's leadership has always been fueled by her passion for integrating faith with the realities of the workplace. This commitment led her to co-found the Bay Area Center for Faith, Work, and Tech. The center exists to help leaders navigate the complex intersection of faith and technology.
Our mission is to cultivate faith and work integration in the San Francisco Bay Area to transform people who are transforming the world. And what we mean by that is, like, in the Bay Area, people here work in some of the most influential companies, work on some of the most influential technologies, or there's a lot of culture making here. And we see that Christians here have a great opportunity to really steward their influence for kingdom purposes. But there really isn't a lot of resources or developmental type experiences to help people actually know how to do that. So our scope includes creating programs. And so we actually have a deep dive discipleship programs focused on faith and work that will be taught by pastors to their churches, throughout the Bay Area. So that's kind of one of that's our primary and flagship program that we're launching with. We'll have other programs to help people cultivate faith and work integration, especially in the workplace. addressing specific work needs I have, including the topic for this podcast today. We will also be connecting all things faith and work here in the Bay Area, because there are a lot of organizations that are doing pieces and parts of faith and work. And so we want to be kind of like the hub or the glue to bring that all together. And then we want to catalyze new initiatives. Once people have either gone through our programs or have kind of had this discipleship really ingrained or formed in them, they might be eager to start a new venture, start a new business, start a new ministry. And so how can we support those folks? We want to be able to resource them and promote them and support them. So that's, we're going to start doing all of that this fall. And our kickoff will be a big Bay Area Faith and Work Summit here in San Francisco on November 2nd. So, yeah.
As Denise's journey unfolds, a clear theme emerges. Her belief that leadership, particularly in today's fast-paced world, requires more than just skill or ambition. It calls for a boldness that is deeply grounded in faith. This type of leadership challenges the status quo, not through arrogance, but through courageous obedience to following God's call to become who He created us to be.
There's some quote about how God loves us the way we are, but doesn't want to leave us the way we are. He wants to grow us. He wants to form us. And so that often means calling us to do things that we would consider to be bold. And He also gives us the courage to do them. And so I think it's really, bold leadership is about stepping forward into what God is calling us to, even if we are afraid, even if we are hesitant, but knowing that God has gone before us and He is going with us. And I say that as if, I do bold leadership all the time. It is so not the case, but I think that, I think the other part of it, I will say, and maybe this speaks to why I don't step out as boldly as I think I should, is often I'm more concerned about my own ambition, my own agenda, like what I want to do. And sometimes that can be at odds with what God is calling me to do. Because a lot of times what God is calling me to do is to be humble, to be quiet, to be patient, to go slow. And that's not my natural MO. And so it's been this learning process of saying, sometimes boldness doesn't mean like fast, active, out there, but it does mean dependence upon the Lord, and it does require dependence on the Lord. And that's really what I'm trying to practice.
As we've started to unpack this idea of bold leadership rooted in humility, there's so much more to explore. Stay tuned, because after the break, we'll dive even deeper into how true boldness in our leadership comes from embracing humility at its core. Are you a working woman looking to elevate your leadership this year? Polished Collaboratories could be your next right step in moving forward in your leadership development. Polished Collaboratories are small groups modeled after executive peer groups, yet available to working women at all levels of leadership. Collaboratory members dive into leadership training with a faith-forward perspective for 12 months. This is your opportunity to tap into diverse perspectives, conquer challenges, and achieve your goals in a united sisterhood. New groups are launching in 2024. We want you to be a part of it. So go to polishednetwork.org/collaboratories to learn more. In our preparation for today, you had mentioned that you co-wrote an article for Made to Flourish called "How to Be Humble in the Age of Self-Promotion." We will be sure to link this article in the show notes for this episode. So if you want to read it for yourself, you can go to the show notes and check it out there. But Denise, I found it fascinating, just this idea to consider how to build our self-promotion on the cornerstone of humility. which that just like made me kind of stop in my tracks, because it just doesn't feel like those two things go together, right? And so Denise, how do you see boldness and humility working together in effective leadership?
Yeah. Well, first, let me explain that, I wrote this article, or I co-wrote it with my friend, Keith Carson, primarily for myself, in the sense that this was something that I was really struggling with. And maybe many of you listeners can relate to this if you are an entrepreneur or you are a leader. So much of your success, quote unquote success, depends on you putting yourself out there and you kind of drawing attention to you and what you're doing, what you're working on, your priorities. And so I was feeling this tension between feeling like I needed to do that, not only for my role in the business world where I am a speaker and trying to get people to book me to speak at their engagements.
Right.
I kind of need to be out there and be like, hey, I'm your girl, but also with running the Bay Area Center for Faith Work and Tech, we're launching. I need people to know about what we're doing. I want to draw attention to everything that we have going on. And so feeling a tension between wanting to be out there, but then also knowing that, looking at the way that Jesus achieved his mission, the way he went around about his ministry was not all of this kind of flashy, hey, look at me stuff,
right?
But was really about service and a posture of humility and a sense of real love for the people he was serving. And so I wanted to figure out, like, how do I cultivate that in myself? What is the right way to be humble in the age of this self-promotion?
Right.
And I think that it really is about, following Jesus' example. And there is a kind of triteness to the, what would Jesus do? But I think that this is one area in particular where we have a lot to learn from him.
I agree. I like to say I'm a product of 90s Christian pop culture. And that was like late 90s, early 2000s. That was like, I had the bracelet and the t-shirt and the sticker, WWJD. Like, what would Jesus do? And that is, but as you said, as trite as it can be, it's so important for us to kind of come back to that, because I agree with you. Jesus is the greatest leader that ever lived. And so why aren't we looking to his example, not just in the stories that he told, those were important, and his sermons and his teachings were important, but just, like, I love the Gospel of Mark, because I think of that book of the Bible as like Jesus in action, like his word in action. And he did a lot of things immediately, because he was just so focused on the mission and the vision and where he was supposed to go. And you don't really read much anywhere about him, like posting up signs like, I'm here. It's like people just were drawn to him, so there's just something to be said about the posture in which he interacted with people. And I'm sure just because what I know of him myself and my relationship with him, the humility that he brought to the table to listen and be with people, and see them and lead them in the best way. And, you mentioned in your article, Jesus calling his disciples to lay down their own agenda for his. How can leaders today apply that principle in their approach to leadership and self-promotion?
Yeah. Well, again, Jesus was the ultimate example. When we talk about his humility, he is the Son of God. He is God himself, and yet he humbled himself to the point of dying on the cross for us.
Yes.
So how do we do that? I think there are three questions that we outline in the article, and I think that those three questions then lead to some practices. So let me just kind of briefly talk about the questions, then I'll talk about the practice.
Great.
So the first question, that I think we need to start off with is who are we? Or maybe more correctly, whose are we? And I think the more we can understand and embrace our identity as children of God and beloved children of God, not only will that root us in a security that I think will maybe address some of the insecurity from which self-promotion can come from, right? But it will also, I think, help us see how if God is our Father, we want to be representing Him. We want to be doing things that reflect glory on Him, and doing that in a way that's really appropriate for being a child of Him, not the Creator ourselves. So the first question is, who are we, or whose are we? The second question is, what are we called to? And I think that's really trying to understand, what is the mission, or what is the purpose that God has called me as an individual to? Again, Jesus was so clear about what His mission was on earth, and He was not going to allow anything to distract Him for that or detract from that. And so in the same way, I think the clearer we can be about what are we called to, and what the Westminster Catechism, our chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. Number one purpose. And then how do we do that? Really just kind of getting into our purpose. I think that is, being grounded in that is really important. And then the third question is, who are we following? And that really speaks to this example of Jesus, and as it says in Romans 12, not conforming to the pattern of this world, but being transformed by the renewing of our minds, really setting our minds on what did Jesus do, what was important to Jesus, and continually kind of grounding ourselves in we are called to follow Him and not the world. And so when you kind of process through these questions, I think it brings you to a point where you want to be humble, and then you can open yourself up to certain practices. Like one of the things I do every day is in my morning time with the Lord, I pray through the agenda or the things that I have to do that day, that are on my calendar, on my to-do list, and ask the Lord for are these the right things for me to be paying attention to? Is there anything on here that I shouldn't really spend time on? Or are there things that aren't on this list that I really need to be attending to? And then B, how do I actually approach each one of these things? If I have a meeting with a client, what is the posture or mindset I want to go into that meeting with? If I have a working session with my co-founder, how can I bless him and serve him? And how can I be the hands and feet of God to him? And so really kind of praying through very specifically everything that I'm going to do that day. That I think helps me kind of submit my ambition to His, and then continually trying to continually remind myself of that throughout the day as well.
Now that's really good, and it's a reminder of inviting God into your work. Through that is what I'm hearing. Is this spiritual practice, if you will, of just presenting to God, because He knows what's on your docket, and He knows what's missing. He knows, He knows the curveballs you're going to experience that day that might hinder your list, or maybe you overscheduled yourself. Guilty. I'm saying this over here. I'm guilty of that.
I never do that, Jane.
You never do. Okay, Denise. Well, obviously, I need to take notes from you. No, I interviewed someone recently, and they encouraged our listeners and myself to not schedule more than 75% of your day. And I said, 75%. And I said, well, I'm guilty of that. That's a place of growth there for me.
Yes.
But I'm
like at 110, 120%.
Exactly. And it's like, and you wonder why you get upset when a kid wakes up sick or something, and it's just like, they can't help it. And God knows, And, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that spiritual practice of sitting with God and just kind of looking at your agenda, looking at what's on your to-do list or what needs to get done. And just, he's just being invited into that process. I think that's such a crucial step, right, for us as leaders, especially leaders who are seeking to partner with God, because He cares, right?
Yeah.
He didn't call you, and that I think it does require humility on our part, because again, like we both just shared, we're ambitious women and we have a plan. God, I'm really good at planning, so, gosh, you also mentioned, in your article, the risks of self-promotion leading to self-praise and a misplaced identity. And you kind of touched on that in your response to the previous question. Are there any other strategies that leaders can use to promote themselves in their work while maintaining humility?
Well, one thing that getting very practical, and I had wanted to make sure that I talked about this is, if you're like me, you do a lot of social media posting.
Yeah.
And I think we can tend to get into this thing of, oh, look at what I'm doing, what I think, like, here's my word for you, et cetera. And again, I don't want to say that those things aren't important. I mean, and as someone who follows a lot of great people on social media, I do want to hear from the people that I follow. At the same time, I think there's a real opportunity to talk about other people and to be other people's greatest supporters, greatest promoters, drawing attention to what other people are doing or just what we see God doing in the world. And we might not even know the person responsible for it, but just kind of making sure that we are drawing people's attention not only to ourselves and what we're doing, but to what God is doing in the world through everyone else. And so that's a very specific tactic, but it's something that I really try to do when I look kind of like at my monthly calendar of posts. How many of these do I really need to be talking about myself versus what are all these other great things that I could be shining a spotlight on?
I love that. It's really just, it's I don't know, I see it as twofold. It's like a self-awareness of like you said, looking at your content calendar and then being like, maybe we don't need to talk about me a lot this month. And who else do I know that is doing good work in the world that can be spotlighted? And I think a lot of us, gosh, that can be challenging, but at the same time, it's really like lifting each other up and trusting, like they're not our competition, right? They're, we're cheerleading each other on in the work that God is leading us each down. Cause I can only imagine it's complementing each other and making great impact together. Right?
Yeah. And you raise a good point, Jane, about competition, because I think that is something that as women, we struggle with, in the sense that, a couple things. One is, there seem to be sometimes so few opportunities for women to either be in a leadership position or to, have the spotlight or to be on stage or be that platform. And I think if you approach those kinds of things with a scarcity mentality of, they're only going to have one woman do this, or I see of the 5 executive leaders in my company, only one woman there. You can kind of get into this mentality of, I need to compete with other people, to make sure that I'm well positioned to step into that opportunity. And, I think competition doesn't have to be that way. I think competition, if you think about it more like in, athletics, or we are recording this right around the time of the Olympics, where you kind of see that happen in sports. I think competition is a way to help you get better at what you are doing, to kind of look at other people and say, oh wow, that person is really excelling in that thing. I want to do that too. So it's a means of inspiration and maybe a means of kind of almost, aspiration setting. But it doesn't have to be a means of putting other people down or kind of saying, I need to win so that you need to lose so that I win. But rather, I want all of us to get better. And maybe that's the other thing that I would say is that as you step into a leadership role or when you are in a leadership role, so much of the winning really should be about your team. and everyone who is working together to make what you're doing possible. And so as much as you can use kind of competition to rally the troops and get everyone excited and focused and working towards a greater goal, that's another, great way to think about competition. It's not me winning relative to everyone else, but it's like us working really hard together to get better and to kind of spur each other on to greatness.
That it reminds me of the importance of community, of us being in community. I see teams that we're on, the teams that we lead, or are a part of, community is such a crucial piece to that. And Jesus was in community too. Like, he wasn't just the leader. He surrounded himself with people. I don't know. Could you speak more into that? Like, how does the call to live in community and serve others shape the way that we lead and promote our work in the marketplace?
Wow. One of so I have a set of like core values that I try to ground myself in. And I added a new one based on a book I had read. I can't even remember what the title of the book was, so forgive me. But
That's okay.
The author made this distinction between loving people versus needing them. And this idea that, when you are secure in your identity as Christ's beloved child, and you know that he will provide everything you need, so you trust in him completely, you don't need people to give you approval or to give you a sense of significance or validation, or you don't need people to kind of make yourself feel good about yourself,
Right.
You really can adopt this true posture of love and servanthood. And so, as I said, it's a core value that I would say, again, being transparent is more aspirational than is a reality for me now. I mean, I think that I have to undo many, many years of feeling like I have to have other people's approval and other people's acceptance in order to have self-worth. I need to undo all of that. So it's definitely something I'm working on. But as much as I can, I'm really trying to adopt this posture of truly loving people and seeking what they need, and how can I be a part of what God is doing in their life. And when you start seeing the people around you like that, I think you naturally are drawn to want to do things with them and to be with them and to achieve great things with them. And it's not about you needing to lead or needing to get the recognition. It's about you being in community with them and truly loving them through like either working together or serving them or doing something with them. So I don't know if I'm answering your question completely, but that's kind of the posture that I've been trying to adopt, that I think has maybe brought a different dimension to the community or the relationships that I have. As a leader.
No, Denise, that is really good. And as we are navigating this conversation together, this through line I keep coming back to is just the importance of where our identity is rooted. I mean, without an identity that is anchored in Christ, authentic humility is not naturally going to come to us. I'm going to be transparent. I am not naturally humble. Like as a human being, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I have selfish tendencies, and I want the self-promotion. I want people to pay attention, if I'm being quite honest. But it's not until you truly experience that love, that Jesus offers, that God is, and it's not until you fully, authentically surrender to that and just have this reckoning, if you will, of understanding your humanity. I'm reading this book, The Soul of Leadership by Ruth Haley Barton.
Yes.
It was a recommendation from a new friend I've been making through Polish Network, and I have been really enjoying it. And she said something, a lot of people think we're human beings trying to be more spiritual, but we're spiritual beings really learning how to be human, like understand. And she meant by just like this idea of how limited we are as human beings. And we are created by a limitless God. And that highlights to me the relationship we were designed for that was severed in the garden with, through the story of Adam and Eve, right? And it's like every time I experience, a leadership pain or just a hardship, or I experience suffering in my life, it forces me to really wrestle with this, like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is being stirred? What is being triggered here? Yes. And what's God trying to teach me? And that spawns from this identity that I've been cultivating like for 30 plus years of my life, with my walk with Jesus. It's an ongoing process. And that's what I'm just hearing throughout. Like, we're talking about leading boldly on the cornerstone of humility. And that really can't happen unless you are like deeply anchored with your identity in Christ. Right. I don't know. Do you have anything?
That's a mic drop. I think you just said it perfectly. No, really.
Denise, I love it.
No. Yes.
Yeah. Just, I don't know. I just been really sitting with it. And I'm in, I would say, a hard season. And I was even sharing with our team today, like, I'm kind of tired of the question, why? Like, why is this happening? Because we know why. We know why this is happening. The world is not as it should be, and it's not as it was created to be, and we are living in the now but not yet of God's kingdom, and I have freedom to choose. Am I going to go my way, or am I going to follow Jesus's way? And Jesus's way is pretty hard because my human nature just doesn't want to go down that road. Yes. And it's through that humility, it's through that act of surrender, because I've experienced his love that makes me want to do that. And when, it's like the closer you get to Jesus, the more you're aware of the people around you. And I see them wrestling with similar things that I did. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but if you just turn to him, like, I'm not going to say he's going to fix it all, but he's going to instill in you this peace, all those fruits of the Spirit that we read about. And there is a full life waiting for you if we would just, surrender. But again, it all stems from this identity in Christ. And will we choose that, or will we choose like the self-promotion, the following our human tendencies, which is immediate gratification, I guess, here on earth. But then what's that going to leave you? Right. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. So even rooting ourselves in that identity in Christ is an act of humility. Like you said, it's an act of surrender. And I love the word that you use, freedom, in the sense that like you may think that you're giving up something by surrendering. You are actually freeing yourself. And the times, the moments when I can truly experience my identity in Christ, it's so sweet.
It is. And it's what transforms us ultimately. And it never goes as quick as we want it to. Sometimes I feel like I'm in like a broken record or cycle loop where I'm like, okay, I thought I learned this lesson. I guess there's something more to go through. But that's what makes him so good, because he's so patient with us. And he's like, okay, you got a little more to learn here. But gosh, I'm like just really appreciative of your perspective on this. Before we transition into a break, is there anything, I'm thinking of the listener here and they're like, I'm trying to promote my business or my brand or whatever. And like, how can, challenges, how can we as leaders use social media and other platforms to reflect Jesus's example of love, service, and humility while leading boldly?
Yes. And so, in the article, I believe there's kind of a list of questions that we kind of say, hey, ask yourself before you press send on your social media post.
Yeah.
And if it's not in the article, I definitely will, share that with your listeners so we can have in the show notes. But I think it's just kind of a checklist of things to kind of ask yourself, who am I drawing attention to? Does this reflect my identity as God's beloved child? And does this post truly honor God and love our neighbor? And I think that if you can just kind of have some of these questions in the back of your head, just, before you press on that click enter, just to kind of get yourself into the habit of asking yourself, I think those habits will make you more conscious in that moment, but over time, they will also form you so that you will start constantly asking yourself those questions about everything that you are thinking, saying, and doing.
That's so good. So good. Well, I just really appreciate the perspective you're sharing here, Denise. And hopefully it's an encouragement to some of our listeners to consider what humility looks like in their leadership today. Well, if you've been around here for a while, you know what's coming up next. Our fan favorite segment, Ask Me Anything. Get ready for some thought-provoking questions curated by a past podcast guest who's not only a best-selling author and business coach, but also a mom of 5 who turned her life around after hitting rock bottom. Are you intrigued? Stay tuned after the break to find out who it is and to hear how they've shaped the questions we're diving into today. Are you looking to grow as a leader while connecting with like-minded women in your area? It's time for you to discover the monthly Polished Chapter Gatherings. At Polished, we're on a mission to embolden women in their faith and work. Our gatherings are designed for women just like you, driven professionals who seek connection, development, and the truth of the gospel. Each meeting features inspiring guests, opportunities to share experiences, and meaningful connections with others who share your values. It's more than a gathering. It's a community of support and growth. Whether you're looking to enhance your professional skills, deepen your faith, or simply connect with others on a similar journey, Polished Chapter Gatherings offer the connection you crave, the development you deserve, and the gospel-centered encouragement you need. Visit polishednetwork.org/chapters to find a chapter near you and join us for the next gathering. Together, let's grow, inspire, and lead with purpose. Well, welcome back, friends, to the Polished Podcast. We hope you're enjoying this insightful discussion with today's guest, Denise Lee Yohn. But now, let's add a splash of spontaneity and a sprinkle of fun to the show. It's time for Ask Me Anything. So Denise, here is how, I love that energy. I love that energy. Here is how Ask Me Anything works. We're about to uncover the woman behind the profession, the quirks behind your expertise. I have received 3 questions from one of our previous podcast guests, and your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to answer those questions to give us a deeper insight into who you are. Are you ready?
I think so. We'll find out.
Oh, yes. Denise, you're going to be able to rock this segment. You're going to be able to handle it. Today's questions were curated by Allie Worthington. She's an author, a podcaster, a business coach. And I'm really excited. I thought she had some pretty interesting questions today. So, question 1.
What was your biggest leadership mistake? And what did you learn from it?
Okay, I have to set the context a little bit to kind of explain.
Okay.
I am a keynote speaker, so I was ready to speak to the top marketing, like chief marketing officers at some of the world's biggest companies, and I got on stage and kind of thought, okay, I'm going to share my brilliance with these folks, and hopefully they're going to leave like so inspired and like, wow, that was so insightful, and never thought of these things before. And the talk went completely flat. And it was really hard. Afterwards, I was like, oh, that was not good. And if anyone who's listening is a speaker, that feeling when things didn't go well. And when I was thinking back to why that happened, it was because I was so focused on like this greatness that I thought I was going to bring to them, versus I think me really trying to understand where they were coming from and to put myself in their shoes. And to understand like kind of the struggle that they were having that would lead me to then be able to speak into that. And so now what I do is every time I go before, when I'm on stage, I'm always thinking about what are these people really dealing with? And often I will tell a story of another time when I made a huge mistake, only so that they can understand that, no, I get you. I've been where you are. Sometimes I still find myself where you are. And so let's work on this problem together. And so I think that is, that was a big mistake that has actually hopefully helped me to be better.
I love it. Yeah. I think the most powerful communicators, and that's something I'm learning. I speak at my church periodically, and yeah, you really need to know what your audience needs. I've been there too, Denise, where you tell a joke or something and it's crickets and you're like, okay, moving on. Yeah.
Right.
No. So awesome. Well, question 2.
What makes you happy right now? What's filling you up? What's giving you energy? What's getting you excited?
Well, I would love to talk about all these great things I'm doing with the Bay Area Center for Faith, Work, and Tech, but I have to be honest and say that my husband and I have gotten into this habit of Sundays truly being a time of Sabbath where, especially in the afternoon, we just kind of like poke around, read a little, take a nap, have a snack, and no agenda whatsoever. And it is such a sweet, restful, peaceful time and a reconnection for me with him. And I just love that. And for someone who is on 100%, over 100% every day, to have some moments when I can just do nothing is the sweetest time for me. And that is actually what is actually filling me up and giving me a lot of energy and satisfaction.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. Rest is so needed and so little practiced in leaders I'm finding. So, bravo. That's awesome. That's awesome that you're doing that.
Yeah.
All right. Question 3.
What is your most productive tool or resource that's helping you in your work these days? Let's be super practical. Maybe it's something tech. Maybe it's a mindset shift. What's a tool or a resource that's really helping you?
Yeah, I would say it's my to-do list, and I use an online to-do app called Tick. And basically, I write down every single thing that I need to do, and it allows you to prioritize and categorize and everything like that. And then I just work my to-do list. And I know that sounds like a really basic thing, but for me, it like helps me keep track. So my brain, I don't have to worry about me forgetting like something really important that I need to do, or like if there's something I need to do 2 weeks from now, I put it on the list, and I know I will make sure I get that done. And it is just a way for me just to kind of keep myself on track. So whether you use Tick or not, I strongly recommend a very like strong devotion to your to-do list. That's my productivity tip.
No, I love that. I used to resist those, and I'm finding how powerful a to-do list can be in focusing priorities and attention and what needs to get done. So, Denise, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more with us. And here's the thing, friends, we want you to join the conversation too. Do you have a burning question or a curious musing or a wild wondering about our guests or about leadership? Now's your chance to be a part of the action. Visit our website at polishnetwork.org to submit your questions today. Become a Polish Podcast MVP and get a mention plus insight into your favorite guests. Send in your questions today. What's a key takeaway you hope our listeners remember and apply in their own leadership journey?
Well, Jane, I'm going to have to like co-opt what you've shared, because I think you really hit on something important. And that is that if we want to kind of ground ourselves, everything we do, including our self-promotion, on the cornerstone of humility, we need to be rooted in our identity in Christ.
Yeah.
And be rooted and see that as a way that we continue to grow, and that we, it's something that we need to continually revisit and cultivate in our lives.
So in that vein, I'm thinking of the listener that's like, okay, I hear you, rooting my identity in Christ. Maybe it's a little shaky foundation right now, or just like they don't know where to do or what's the next right step. I don't know if you could challenge our listeners to take a specific action this week that maybe would lead to that piece of rooting yourself in your identity with Christ. What could be one next step a listener could take towards that?
Yeah. So this is a small thing, but it's actually reaped dividends for me. And that is to do something that can remind you on a regular basis that you are a child of God. And so for those of you listeners those of you followers who are watching, you can see that I'm holding up on the video screen this tattoo I have on my wrist. And
cool.
It is the Chinese characters for the word daughter. And so whenever I look at that, it reminds me that I am God's beloved daughter. And so it is a kind of this just constant reminder. I know someone else who, whenever he signs his name in very small letters under his name, he just writes COG, child of God. I mean, you can hardly even make it out, but it's just something that he does whenever he signs something. He just adds that as a reminder, I'm a child of God. If it's a sticky that you need to put on your desk, or maybe it's a screensaver on your phone, something that will constantly remind you that you are a child of God. I think that, it's just a little thing, but it really can transform your mind and the way that you see yourself.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes we do need to just take that small step, to gain that momentum towards where God's calling us or leading us. So yes. I really appreciate you sharing that, Denise. I think that's really powerful for us all to consider as we continue to just deepen that root to where our identity is, or maybe even cultivate an awareness of where it's misplaced right now, Yes. So before we wrap things up, Denise, are there any spiritual practices or resources or disciplines you'd recommend to help our leaders stay grounded in humility while pursuing bold leadership?
Well, it's something that we just talked about, which is the Sabbath practice. And it's something I would just encourage folks to do. And please don't hear me as, you must take a Sabbath in order to be spiritual, or if you're not taking a Sabbath, you should feel badly, whatever. I would just say, try to take an extended period of time on a regular basis where you are either like I do, like doing absolutely nothing basically, or doing the opposite of what you normally do. And so in that case, because I'm so active, it really is doing nothing. For other people, it's like going for a bike ride, or maybe it's hanging out with friends if you normally are, more by yourself, whatever it is, but take some time to unplug from what you normally do and kind of unplug from your day to day and plug into the Lord. And I think that you will find it is just a sweet time of refreshment and renewal. And God will meet you there. And so just whatever you can do to work into your life, even if it's just a few moments, I would just encourage folks to make sure that you are taking that time to rest in God.
That's so good. Well, Denise, it has been such a gift to get to talk to you and to learn from you and just to hear more of your heart behind leadership and all the things. How can people connect with you or follow the work that you do beyond this episode?
Yeah, first, Jane, thank you so much for having me on the show and on this great conversation. I've been ministered to just by what you've shared, so thank you. Please, I hope people will reach out to me. Instagram, I'm Denise Lee Yohn. LinkedIn, Denise Lee Yohn. And then the Bay Area Center for Faith, Work, and Tech can be reached at faithworktech.org.
Awesome. We will be sure to link all of that in our show notes so you can have a direct connection to the work that Denise does. Again, thank you so much today for joining us and sharing your heart with us. It's been a gift.
It's been a gift to me as well. Thank you.
Today's conversation with Denise Lee Yohn has been a powerful reminder that true boldness in leadership is rooted in humility. We've learned that leading with courage means responding in obedience to God's call on our lives, rather than seeking our own selfish ambition. Denise's insights have illuminated how integrating faith into our leadership involves not just bold actions, but a deep-seated humility that guides our every decision. As we move forward, let's embrace this blend of boldness and humility, knowing it can profoundly shape both our personal growth and our leadership journey. Do you have a takeaway or a question from today's conversation? If so, let us know. Share your thoughts for this episode on our Instagram post, or if you're watching on YouTube, in the comments below. Let's continue this dialogue on leading boldly. As we wrap up this episode, I want to express our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who plays a role in making the Polish Podcast a reality. The Polish Podcast is made possible in part by the generous support of Coca-Cola Consolidated. Thank you to Denise Lee Yohn for your vulnerability and encouragement as we seek a posture of humility in our leadership. To our loyal listeners, your unwavering support and your engagement drive us to deliver content that resonates and emboldens. Thank you, Polish Network, for creating a nurturing community where women in the workforce can thrive and connect. A big thank you to White Oak Christian Church for their partnership and contributions to the production of these episodes. Well, let's face it, we all need a nudge now and then to remind us of our identity. Whether it's sipping from your Faith Over Fear mug or wearing that t-shirt that makes you feel salty and lit, we all need a reminder of who we are.
Do something that can remind you on a regular basis that you are a child of God.
If you're seeking a supportive community for your faith and work journey, I'd love to encourage you to join us on social media and our YouTube channel. Stay updated with our latest content by liking, subscribing, and taking a moment to rate and review the Polish Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Your engagement means so much, and it helps us create content that's meaningful for you. Until next time, though, this is Jane Doerman signing off. Keep moving forward and stay emboldened.